All right, in our last video, we had almost no news. Now it seems that New York Comic Con is going on, so there's a lot of information going out, plus the premiere of season 11 of Doctor Who, and that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and we're only minutes from having watched the episode of Doctor Who, the 11th season with Jodie Whittaker, written by Chris Chibnall. And if you've not seen it, I'm not going to put any spoilers in that I intend to, but I do have some small things that I want to mention about this that you may or may not have noticed. It seems that anytime that there is a new regenerated Doctor, there are details, generally hearkening back to previous Doctors. And so I've noticed a few of them in this episode, and we'll talk about that here. First of all, you may notice there were some that were fairly obvious. For instance, after a regeneration, the Doctor is often confused and not quite knowing everything. There's usually the technical expertise there. Well, in the case of Capaldi, he didn't know how to fly the TARDIS, presumably, but knew who he was. Whereas other Doctors have not known who they were before the first episode was out. And so that was something that was parallel with previous regenerations, a sense of confusion and kind of a usually jokes referring to the previous Doctor. There were at least two of them that I saw, one of saying, I used to be a white-haired Scotsman, and another saying, I remember my legs being longer. Little jokes put in like this, and it's not unusual to see that in previous Who's. So far as we go, it seems that this is following the trend of past regeneration episodes of Doctor Who. They're always interesting to see just where the character is going, how its personality is going to be relative to the previous incarnation of the Doctor. So in this case with Jodie Whittaker, she's for a moment confused that she's a woman, and then remembers that immediately, but can't quite get her name. And so that's kind of a running thing, a running gag through the episode. The plot of the episode isn't really as important as all of that. It looks very much in structure like the episode that started with Matt Smith, in which case that his TARDIS was wrecked, his sonic screwdriver was damaged, and he had to borrow somebody's cell phone to actually work out some of the details. And then this has that parallel there. There's no sonic screwdriver, there's no TARDIS, and yet with a cell phone she's able already to start tracking the monster. And happens to find herself in an electronic hobbyist workshop who has all kind of electronic instruments by which she's able to get any number of gadgets that she's going to need to defeat this alien. As usual, and also in accordance with previous Doctor Who lore, there is not a shot fired, there is not violence inflicted by the Doctor to anyone, but rather just a matter of outsmarting them and talking them out. So in the case of our monster of this week, the Doctor is able to convince this monster to go elsewhere. In the same way, once again, that Matt Smith was able to just basically say, do you know who I am? You better get out of here. And they found out who he was and they left. Not exactly the same here, but it is of the same general idea. So this is good. We like the friends, no longer called companions, they're a group of friends, and we get some backstory on at least, well, most of the characters. We know about each of them as to they're all trying to overcome something. In one case, a rookie policeman. In another case, a person with a syndrome in which it's difficult to be coordinated. And then a cancer survivor, a rather adventurous nurse. And these people all were worthy companions to the Doctor, who immediately took charge and immediately looked like the Doctor. I mean, there was very little reference made to being a woman. Another one of the Easter eggs was using spoons, which is reminiscent of Capaldi, who always had a spoon in his pocket. There was some loss of regeneration energy in the same way when David Tennant was regenerated from Christopher Eccleston. The crane. Now, they said that they were not going to make references back to the original series of Who's, but they did in fact, where the crane that is used, the second story act, was essentially the way that the Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker, met his end, which was falling from a crane. So these things are all reminiscent, this high wire act that he did in his last episode as the Doctor. So these things all harken back. And then the changing of outfits. When it's time for the Doctor to find her regular outfit, she is not the first to go through various things. I mean, Tom Baker had 4 or 5 different outfits before he came up with his long scarf and greatcoat that he eventually had. And there were others that did a similar kind of thing. I believe when Sylvester McCoy went down into his room of clothing, he noticed some outfits of previous Doctors hanging around that he looked at and then dismissed before he came up with what he did. So this is not unusual as well. So the way they did it for Jodie Whittaker was interesting, differently than we've seen other Doctors find something, but it harkened back to that. And of course, the outfit itself, we may have talked about this in a previous video, the outfit itself, which was picked by the producer and by Jodie Whittaker herself, was a much more comfortable looking outfit than we've ever seen the Doctor in. And basically a t-shirt and suspenders and a coat. And the colors in the t-shirt are the colors of the Doctor's scarf. And so I have a scarf here. You may notice if you look at the episode, the colors are very similar, if not the same, in her shirt. And there are other things they say that they will reveal later that if you're a careful Who watcher, you'll notice. You may notice in some of the David Tennant episodes that the stripes on his jacket were brown when he was going back in time and blue when he was going forward in time. And we have seen from some of the stills that we have seen of Jodie Whittaker that there is a slightly different color of the t-shirt depending on the episode. So we may find out which one is that. Watch for that. Then let's see what else we can say. Everybody had a lot to do. The companions were more than just what's all this, but they were all taking an active part. They were all doing something. They were all holding something. They were all taking her somewhere. They were all involved. And so this Doctor does not look a lot different in attitude and action than previous Doctors, but I would say that the Friends are much more active. They have much more interesting backstories, and they appear to all have special skills which might be useful as the series goes on. That's my first impression of the first episode of Season 11 of Doctor Who. I'd like to know what your impressions are. Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to make sure that you receive our notification. Pretty soon we're going to be sending you our take on the trailer for Star Trek Discovery Season 2 that just was dropped from the New York Comic Con yesterday. And we'll also talk about the first mini trek that was with Tilly. That'll come probably later this week, depending on the breaks. So until then, don't go far.